Hello, everyone, and welcome to Back to School Night 2020. Like everything else in 2020, this will be different. But thank you for tuning in. My name is Mr. Luke Colazzo. My room is C207. This is my 23rd year of service here at Audubon High School. I teach three classes this year. One is History through Film. The other is U.S. History 2 Honors. And the last two periods of the day are U.S. History 2. I am certified in social studies and English in grades K through 12 and all subjects K through 8. I have certification for elementary school, even though I've never taught elementary school. I do have that certification. Best way to get in touch with me is through my email, and that's listed there, lcolazzo@audubonschools.org. Just be careful to get the L correct because my wife also teaches at the school. Her name begins with A, so it's A Colazzo, and I'm L Colazzo. So just make sure that it's going to the right place because often I get her emails and she gets mine. I do have a website. We really don't use that anymore. Probably Google Classroom is the best place. And if you send me an email, you'd like to sign in if you haven't already through your student's site, send me an email and I can give you the class code, and that way you can access the Google Classroom as well. My phone number is there. Again, we usually don't use those. The best way to get in touch with me is via email. I believe the mailbox for the phone number is still active, but I haven't checked it in so long. I don't think there's anything on there, and I hope no one's called because I haven't returned their call in probably a couple of years. A couple things that I go over with the kids: the classroom rules. Obviously, these things are a little bit different for this year, but in a normal year. This is what I would go over with them. We don't have assigned seats. We do start and end classes, and they do ring bells in the class, but it's not necessarily the beginning and the end of class because the kids are home and I'm at the school. But we do like to respect each other. Most kids have their Chromebooks muted. So that's helpful to aid communication. And when I call them, they unmute and they're able to communicate with me and the other their classmates, the other students in the class. They should respect each other and me, and they've been doing that pretty well. And as best as they can, they stay focused on the Chromebook while we're in class. When we're back in school, they'll need to keep their hands to themselves. Obviously, that will be easy when we are back because there's going to be so few of them. We're going to have to social distance. So it's not just for behavior this time. It's actually for the wellness of the students, their health, not just their well-being, we'll say. Obviously, there's no gum chewing food or drinks when they're back in class. When they're home, we prefer that they don't eat in front of the Chromebook. But there's only so many things we can control. We recommend you don't do that. Anything that's a distraction, we try to limit as best we can. Next up is electronics or cell phones. Obviously, they're using Chromebooks, and we like them to stay on the same page unless they're directed to someplace else, such as Google Classroom or some other site where we're doing work. But we want them to stay on the website, the Google Classroom site, for as long as possible while we're working as a class. Obviously, using the lavatory when we get back into the building is going to be kind of directed by COVID and the COVID rules. But in my room, the bathrooms are right across the hall, so we're in a really good situation there. As far as grading, if you haven't already, I know most parents sign on to Genesis, and they have instant access to all their kids' grades, and we really encourage that for everyone. So check those regularly. I'm sure to make mistakes somewhere along the line. So if you see something that's a mistake or it doesn't look right, send me an email right away, and we'll get that fixed up. Sometimes the default grade for every assignment is 100, so sometimes that 100 stays on there, but it's really only a 20-point assignment. So everyone's grade drops by 30 points, and I get a slew of emails, and it's a simple correction. But again, if you see anything that doesn't look right, please send me an email right away, and we'll get it fixed up as soon as possible. The way that I do things is points, total points. So, each assignment is given a certain point value. Say small things are 10 points, things that require a little bit more work are 20 points. in-depth worksheets might be 30 points, quizzes might be 60 or 80 points, and a few assignments, if they're big enough, would get a 100-point grade. So there is no weighted category. It's not like I do quizzes are worth 25% and homework is worth 30%. Everything is just given a different weight value based on how much effort goes into it. So what you're likely to see when you get a student's grade back is maybe a 30 circled, and that means that it was worth 30 and they scored 30. So just a 30 circled would be 100%. They got 30 points out of a possible 30. Something that you're likely to see is maybe a 27 out of 30, which would be a 90%. You simply divide the points earned by the points available, and that would give you a percent. And that's how we work the grade in my class. So again, if there's any questions about that, or if you see something that doesn't seem right, just send me an email and we'll get that fixed up for you as soon as possible. Other activities that will be graded is worksheets, written reports, oral reports, video analysis, quizzes and tests, artistic projects, and group work. And one of the things about group work that people always ask about is, do I give a group grade? And often I will give a group grade. So it's really incumbent upon the kids, if they're having an issue with someone in their group, that they come to me with that issue before the grade is given. So that's one of the things I always try to emphasize. We're not going to do too much of that, obviously, with the shutdown, because kids can't really get together and work the way they could in a classroom. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult. But once we're back in the room and we're able to do those things again, they will be working in groups. And again, I always encourage everyone, if you're having an issue with someone in your group, let us know as quickly as you can. And that way we can get it resolved, rather than after the grade is done and then someone comes and says that someone in their group wasn't holding up their end of the bargain. No, it's it's not something I can really deal with at that point. So we want to make sure that it's getting taken care of prior to the grade being issued. As far as what's new for this year rather than other years, I used to give a participation grade that was worth 100 points. The school frowns upon that, so we reduced it to 40. And really what this is if you look at your students' average, I give them that percentage out of 40 for this grade. So that way, when I put it in, it doesn't really affect their grade at all. If they have a 90 for the marking period, I'll put it in as a 36 out of 40. So that would be 90%. And at that point, it would have no impact on their grade at all. However, if I add points to that, it will make their grade go up. And conversely, if I take points away from that, it'll make their grade go down. So this participation grade, as I call it, allows me to, at the end of the marking period, kind of help kids out that are on the bubble. So we know that an 81 is a C plus, an 82 is a C plus as well, but an 83 is a B minus. So if they're at that 82 or 81 and they've worked really hard and just a couple of grades have brought them down, well, I can bump that up and make them have that 83 for that B minus, because that's maybe something that they deserve because they worked hard and were only dragged down by a couple of bad grades. So I can change the grade by a few points using that. And it goes both ways, but for the most part, I try to bump those up rather than bring them down. But that is a possibility. For the homework load, it's going to be a little bit different, obviously, with the shutdown. We try to do something every day. We're responsible for trying to fill about 50 minutes every day, and depending on what kind of work we're doing. So for instance, we'll give questions that the kids have to answer over a 2-week period. And, we guesstimate maybe 20 minutes of work that will take every day. And then there's 10 or 15 minutes in class, and then another 15 or 20 minutes that the kids will be working on their own. So we try to fill out that 50 minutes, give or take, every single day. So that's what we're doing under the shutdown conditions. When we get back to school, the homework load will probably look something like this. And typically, bookwork's assigned 2 or 3 times weekly. Students are occasionally permitted to complete work in class. If we finish and we have a few minutes, they're able to do that in class. But we do emphasize making sure that they get the work done and getting it in on time. School late policy is if an assignment is turned in on time, they get full credit. If it's 1 day late, it's half credit. And after that, it's a 0. So we want to make sure that they maintain their grade by keeping the work submitted. Make sure that it gets in, because once you start losing things and you put zeros in, remember, if you have 3 or 4 20-point assignments missing, that's like taking a 0 on a quiz. So we want to try to avoid that at all costs. Long-term assignments require organizational skills. So when there's something that's assigned long-term, the students really have to make sure that they're aware of this and make sure they get those in, because they're usually worth a lot more. And if you take half credit on a 100-point assignment, obviously that's going to put a dent in your grade. So we want to try to avoid that as much as possible. Always, if you're concerned about this in particular, make sure you check Google Classroom, because everything's really going to be assigned through there, and that's where we do most of our communication. So if you go to Google Classroom, it says my website, but if you go to check Google Classroom, that's where you're going to see all these things, the due dates, and usually there's assignment sheets there, so you can see what it is exactly that's available. All right. So thanks again for tuning in. Back to school night's a little bit different this year, but I'm glad that all of you have the opportunity to meet me, and I kind of have the opportunity to meet you simply by seeing how many views that I get. But if you have any questions, send me an email, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Looking forward to a great year, and we'll talk to you guys hopefully soon.